you know, we gather in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ at Lighthouse Baptist Church in obedience to the Word of God and the command that His people will assemble in worship and to sing praises to Him and to honor Him. And so we are forced, unhappily, in a situation now where there's a kind of struggle for sovereignty here over the church. This is not the first time in history that the state has attempted to bring the churches out from under the sovereignty of Christ and under the sovereignty of the state. That's something that's happened periodically over history. And we see what's going on right now as an effort to that end. And the reason is because they've never really presented the science supporting their claim that we need to shut the whole country down and take away our religious liberties in order to stop the spread of COVID-19. They've never shown us the science. That's A. I've got B, C, and D here. Let's just start there. But there's one good reason right there. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Show us the science. They keep telling us it's all about the science. I've never seen any science that supports what they're doing. All the science that I've read, they call them RCTs, the studies, the randomized controlled trials, where they set up a test to see if masks work, if they don't work, this kind of thing. And I can't find any science that supports the belief that running around wearing a cloth mask or even one of these surgical masks is going to stop the spread of COVID-19. I just haven't seen that anywhere. I keep asking for it. I get into these debates, and I think we should. We should engage the people who make these statements. We should engage them. I saw a guy presented proof. I should have brought it and put it on the screen for you because it would have overwhelmed you with how convincing the proof is. It was a picture. And the picture had three, sets of people. One of them, the first set, this person was COVID positive and not wearing a mask. This person was COVID negative or didn't have the disease, whatever, and was wearing a mask. And they had a neat little arrow that pointed from this person to that person. And it said inside the arrow, 70% chance of transmission. 70% chance. Wow. That's actually pretty scary, right? I mean, when you see a picture like that, that's true. And then the next set of pictures, we got this person with COVID positive wearing a mask, and this person COVID negative not wearing a mask, and now it's down to, I think it was like 5%. So that mask is really doing some good work here. And then we go to the third set of pictures, and both people are wearing masks, and you can almost see the smile in their eyes. Very, very well drawn. And then the arrow in there, it said 1.5%. Yeah, so there's proof. I saw a picture. So now I know. So I just simply wrote back and I said, this is a really neat picture. Now, direct me to the scientific studies that support these claims. I never heard from them again. And by the way, I was sincere. I didn't go, oh yeah, really? Well, show me your proof. I didn't do that. I thought, wow, if this is true, where's my mask? Right? If that was true. So I said, okay, good. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. But now, direct me to the studies that support these 70s numbers, 70%, 5%, 1.5%. Where's the study for that? Never heard from the person again. And of course, I had already at that time read several, but I went ahead and read more. I have been looking for the science that supports this. It's not there. It's just not there. So I get into these running debates with these people on Facebook sometimes. And again, not in a mean kind of way. I just keep saying, okay, this is very interesting. Appreciate your concern. Direct me to the science that supports your claim. Nothing. Finally, one person from Germany stepped up to it. Stepped up to the challenge and sent me proof. This time it was a video. Yeah, it was really cool. They had a guy standing in profile, and he didn't have a mask on, and they had a big circle right here so that you can see. And so when he's coughing, you can see a cloud of all kinds of particulates. And I'm thinking, okay. Next picture, the guy had a mask on. The cloud was gone. So really cool. That's a great video. So Rebecca, that's a very interesting video. Now, please direct me to the studies that show that this illustrates the movement of COVID-19 through these masks or not. Never heard back. Because there's no science supporting the whole thing. Who here doesn't know that if you're in a workshop and you're sawing, you get the cloud? How many of you have ever lived in the cloud of a workshop? And you put on the N95, right? And it really is effective. It keeps you from inhaling sawdust, which is really good because it blocks sawdust real well, right? But we're not talking about sawdust. We're talking about something that is so small, it's 0.125 nm. What's nm? Nanometers. I don't even know how to conceptualize 1 nanometer besides 1/8 of one. 1/8 of a nanometer. This is stuff that's invisible. This is stuff you can't see except under some pretty specialized microscopes. Now, I'm not going to get cute like I did on my radio show and talk about something that, how many of you heard my show this week? Several of you have not. All right. How do I delicately put this? Never mind. We know for a fact that there is a certain particle that passes through multiple layers of cloth. It's methanethiol. Okay. Peter heard the show, apparently, or has seen this research. And the particle that passes through multiple layers of cloth, called methanethiol, is 0.4 nanometers in size. And it passes through cloth. And it floats in the air. If you happen to be in the area, you're likely to go, and there goes the methanethiol right on into your lung. Well, what you need to understand is that COVID-19 is about 3.5 times smaller than methanethiol. Does anybody actually believe your cloth mask is going to stop that from coming through? No. And guess what? They know that too. They know that. Yes, they know that. So you're wondering, well, why are they encouraging us to wear these cloth masks and all that kind of stuff? Now, again, if you wear an N95 and you form it around your face and you seal it off, okay, and you don't have the respirator because they don't want you to have the respirator, you know why? Air might get out. I'm being a little bit facetious, but the respirator allows particles to get out. They're constructed in such a way that when you breathe in, it closes. But it lets you exhale. Why? Because doctors can't stand there and operate on you if they're passed out. They need to be able to exhale. So those respirators are a different thing than the N95 you buy at your hardware store. The N95, if you wear it correctly, you seal it around your face, you literally can't breathe. Now in my shop, I can't either. If I form that thing, I can't breathe. I'm doing this all the time. And happily, those particles don't, it's different dealing with that kind of particulate matter than it is dealing with something that's so small. But the bottom line is, the minute you compromise that seal, the COVID virus is so small that when you breathe in, you create a vacuum around you. Did you know that? I didn't know all this stuff. It's fascinating what I've learned. But I didn't know the dynamics of mask wearing. Now I do. It's really interesting because if you have a mask on and it's all open up here, when you breathe, you're not getting air through here, right? So where's it coming from? All around you. And what's that doing? It's grabbing every little particle of COVID it can find. It's not helping us. They know that. So I'm looking at Mayo Clinic. You can usually trust Mayo Clinic, am I right? Really, I'm serious. You really can. I mean, they're usually a pretty upfront, straightforward medical organization that's pretty careful about what kind of claims and statements they make. So I'm looking at the Mayo Clinic, who's trying to explain why CDC is recommending that we wear masks. You got to know how to read these these people. Because when you're reading it, they're real clever at how they phrase things. But let me challenge you. Here's what you look for. Find a statement in any scientific study that says these masks prevent COVID-19. You won't find that statement. What you will find consistently is stuff like all the scientific stuff that went on. You'll see statements like no statistical difference, and when you're comparing this mask to that mask, and there's no real benefit, and and no practical benefit, and you'll see that over and over and over again. And then something on the studies where it's obvious there's some political influence there, and they want to support this wear the mask thing, they'll make a statement in there something like masks should help. Masks might help. Masks could help. But you never read that they will. And those statements are always in a larger study where all of the facts gathered from the study say they don't help. It's really weird what's going on. The older studies, they're a lot more honest about it, but the later studies, it gets more and more squirrely on this mask thing. So you begin to wonder, what's going on with the mask thing? So Mayo Clinic clarifies it for us somewhat. Mayo Clinic says, why is the CDC, the question, why does CDC recommend we wear a mask? And then in the paragraph following, even though, oh, by the way, before that, they said, we do not recommend the general public wears medical masking. And you want to know why? A, if you're serious about wearing the medical mask, you've usually got somebody there who's forming it. You go into the area to work, you work for 15, maybe 30 minutes, you come back out, you take the mask off, they put a different one on, and then you go back in. Who's going to do that? It's ridiculous. So, they say we do not recommend the general public wear medical masks. So, question, why then does CDC recommend we wear masks? Answer, even though it's been shown that these masks are not as effective as a medical mask, which we just told you not to wear, nevertheless, there's some efficacy. Oh, well, what's the efficacy? They are helpful to protect you from large droplets. Large droplets. So what's a large droplet? A large droplet is basically something you can see. Anything that's floating around out there that you can't see, well, that's not a large droplet. The virus is communicated from one person to another in these droplets, large ones or small ones. The next line actually betrays the truth about the whole thing. Then they said, and also, public wearing of masks helps remind everybody that there is a pandemic going on. Yeah, some of you caught it just like I did. Now there's the reason. That's the reason. It helps everybody remember there's a pandemic going on. It helps everybody remember that there's a bug going around that's killing. At this point, I think it's way down there now. I think the recovery rate is like 99.98. Yeah. The recovery rate is way, way down there. More and more, it's sneaking out. These headlines are coming out with stuff like, it turns out that this COVID-19 pandemic is not much more devastating than a bad flu season. That's coming out more and more and more. But it's hard to get the truth out to take hold and take traction when you've got a whole array of media that's constantly pumping the hype. Constantly. So I just keep saying, well, where's the science? Show me the science. I'm all for doing whatever we got to do that's reasonable to do if it's reasonable to do it. Right? But there's just no science for this nonsense. But even so, even past all that, the minute that the government begins compelling you to do medical things that they think is good for you, the government decides, well, we think that this would be a good thing to do, so we're going to make you do it. Well, why don't they control our diet? Yeah, you know it is. Why don't they? Why don't they assume the responsibility to send out a menu? Every week, here's what you're going to eat this week. You can eat this, here are the foods you can eat, and here are the foods you cannot eat this week. Start thinking about this. The minute we say to the government, okay, it's up to you to decide for me how I live my life to avoid getting sick, well then pretty soon you have to get up in the morning, you go to your computer, put in your passcode, and the government says, here's what you get to eat today, Jerry, and here's how many steps you need to take, and we're going to put a watch on you and a measure so you can measure how many steps you take, and here's what you hit. And where does this end? Where does it end? Now, of course, the rationale is that they're not saying we're going to try to protect you from your own decisions. We're going to protect other people from your decisions. That's what they're saying. So they've come up with the thing, we've never heard this before. We've come up with the asymptomatic carrier. Have you ever heard of asymptomatic carriers before? Well, interestingly enough, I have. Many, many, many years ago. Everybody is asymptomatically carrying something. Everybody is. And now they come up with this thing because it serves to scare us. I was talking to Mrs. Shabak about this on the way over here. I said, it's easy for us because I've done all this research, and you have too, and we've talked about this a lot, and we've been paying very close attention to the whole thing, so we're kind of up to speed on what's going on with it all and everything. But the average person out there isn't going to do that. Right? They're just not going to do that. And the average person isn't going to go out of their way to find access to media resources that are trustworthy. They're just going to turn the radio on. Am I right? They're just going to turn the radio on and drive along and hear what they're saying. And what they're saying is, everybody's going, we got hospitalization rates are going up. They don't say death count's going down. So, where I'm going with this is, here's how sad it is in the state of affairs right now. They've compromised their integrity to the place where now I'm afraid a lot of people who are at least somewhat informed might need to go to the doctor and they're not going to want to go. Right? I don't trust them. I trust my doctor, the guy I see regularly. I'm looking at him. I know him. I've developed a relationship. I trust him. But I don't trust the medical world today. You kidding me? If I got sick, I'm not going to want to go to a hospital. I'm not suggesting you should feel that way. I'm just telling you, this is a very, very bad thing that they're doing. They're compromising the integrity of the whole medical profession. I don't know if we're going to be able to recover from this, but we need to pray about that because that's a bad situation to be in. When you politicize medicine, that's what happened in Germany. That's what happened there. They politicized medicine. And they're doing it here. So we need a major upheaval to happen in November. I mean, huge. This somebody said, and I thought it was kind of cute, but actually it made a point. This might be the only coronavirus in history that was cured by an election. And you understand exactly what they're saying. I thought it was a good point. But so you got Bill Nye, the science guy, and I quipped on him this week on my show. Bill Nye and the science lie. He puts this whole thing together, right? He's got a candle, and it's real supercilious. He's got an attitude of arrogance and you stupid people, let me help you understand why you should wear a mask, dummies. Now, he doesn't say that, but that's exuding from him. He's a very arrogant man. So you got the candle up here, and he's got a candle going right. He puts on the N95, and he shows us. Don't duck. It's not going to get that far. I'm just kidding. And the candle doesn't even waver. And it's like saying, you can't blow out a candle through this N95. Then he puts that down. He picks up a mask called a surgical mask. He puts it on, and it wavers just a little bit. He says, yeah, just a little bit of air is getting through, but not very much. Then he puts on a cloth mask, puts it on, and blows it out. So he proved that the cloth mask is doing nothing for you. He proved that. And then he proved that the surgical mask and the N95 is a mask that's interfering with your ability to breathe. In other words, when you go in an N95, all of that CO2 stayed inside the mask. That's what he proved. He didn't prove anything about COVID-19. But because you can't he proved you can't blow a candle out when you're wearing those masks. But people don't think that way. They see that and they go, well, yeah, see, it's obvious. And they go draw a picture. Or they make a little video. See, it's obvious. How obvious is it? The only thing obvious about his illustration was the fact that you can't blow out a candle through an N95, which means you can't get air out of your lungs through an N95. That's what it means. If you want to really get down to it, here's the way. Let me tell you how you can keep yourself safe from COVID. Watch this. This is going to be amazing. Because you're seeing these pictures come out now where if you pull your mask down, you've just taken your mask off and pulled it down over an exposed area. And now you've filled up your mask with COVID-19. When you put it back up, you breathe it in. So don't pull your mask down. So I want to know what happened to all the COVID-19 that was on my face before I put my mask on. Did I just trap a bunch of COVID-19 into my mask? You see what I'm trying to say? The mask thing isn't going to... You'd have to sanitize your face in a purified room. And once you sanitize it, put the mask on and hope that no COVID thing got in there before you put it on. It's just crazy. All right, so now here's what you do. You put it on, then you get a breath of air. And then blow out. Uh-oh. I just filled my mask with particles. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Right? That's the truth of it. That's the reality of the situation. It's just crazy. So, I've done that, now I'm hyperventilated. But the point is, they know all this. That's what bothers me. These guys know this. The reason Fauci originally said, Americans don't need to walk around. Americans are going to walk around wearing masks. There's no need to wear a mask. The reason he said that first is because that's the truth. I didn't know which one was true. Fauci first said, you don't need to be wearing a mask. And then a month or so later, everybody should wear a mask. So I'm thinking, well, one of these things is a lie because they both can't be true. So which one is the lie? One of them is a lie. So A, we've seen, okay, Fauci is a liar. Done. We know that. Given. Now we got to figure out which thing is the lie. So that's where I went into my research and discovered that his first statement was actually true. His later statement was the lie. And he knows it's a lie. that silly lab experience that Bill Nye put out there, it's a lie. Because it doesn't answer the question. How do you protect yourself from a particle that's 0.125 nanometers in size? It doesn't answer that question. It certainly answers the question whether you can breathe in those stupid things, but it doesn't answer the question. Interesting. You got to understand how these guys work. They create an illustration that doesn't answer the question. The question is, how do you stop a particle the size of 1/8 of menethiol? That one. I did pretty good there for a while. I don't know, I forgot how to pronounce it right. But that little particle that escapes, anyway, that's almost 4 times larger than the COVID-19. How do you stop that thing from getting into you? You don't. I'm sorry, I don't want to scare anybody, but you don't. If it's out there, you're probably going to wind up breathing it. Which is no doubt why people are running around riding their bikes. What's the matter with these people? You got a guy riding his bike, all covered up. Yeah, makes me where I can't breathe watching him. I go, I want to breathe for the guy, People walking around all by themselves out in the wide air, wearing a mask. I mean, even the government says you can sit down and eat without your mask on. And why don't we all die of COVID right then? If COVID's floating around in the air, then if I take it off and I'm eating, COVID! I get COVID bombarded. See, God designed the body to react to these things that go on by building antibodies. You ever heard of antibodies? God designed our body to do that. That's the way he designed us. And as these things first enter into a population, they come very vigorous, very strong, and they're pretty scary stuff. Can be. Like pneumonia. Pneumonia is pretty scary when you're my age. Pneumonia could kill you. So since pneumonia can kill you, we're going to shut down the entire country to protect everybody from pneumonia. We have the seasonal flu bugs that mutate. These flu things, they mutate. They have to scramble to come up with a new vaccine to address these new, right? All these mutations. It's crazy. But God designed, it's just the way it is. It's a cyclical thing. So God designed our body to constantly take in these things. I mean, the body is always examining anything that comes in. And it sets off an alarm inside your system that goes beep, beep, beep. Kind of sounds like that if you listen close. And it builds these antibodies and sends these antibodies out to attach itself to that thing and to kill it. And your body learns how to deal with it. That's what happens. And then as time goes on and this virus works its way through the population, it begins to get weaker and weaker and weaker. Why? Because the population is building an antibody reaction to this thing, and it's called herd immunity. You've heard of that, right? Herd immunity. That's what it's called. So literally, by going out of our way to slow down the contact with one another, we are actually slowing down the divinely designed system for reacting to a thing like this. Now, there is some argument and some science that supports the idea that at the beginning of one of these pandemics, it's a good idea to do the careful thing about shaking hands and to be careful about it, maybe even. Wear a mask if you're concerned someone's going to spit on you. Because a mask can help you in that case. Someone's spitting in your face. So if you're going to go down to a Black Lives Matter thing, you might definitely want to wear a mask. You want some protection there. But just general intercourse as you go about the day in your normal life, out and whatever, it's just, actually, it's the fact that we're having an increased case count is a good thing. Because it means more people have been exposed, have begun to build the antibodies and we're beginning to reach herd immunity. So it's a good, the case count is a good thing if you have a corresponding decrease in the death count. Now, I wouldn't say it's a good thing if you have an increase in the case count with an increase in death count. Now, that would be concerning. But if you have an increase or a spike in case count with a drop, a significant drop in death rate, that's a good sign. So the fact is the death count has gotten so low now, we are below the threshold of what's called an epidemic. The truth is the COVID-19 thing is no longer, it doesn't even qualify any longer as an epidemic. How about that? So what you've noticed is what I've noticed. The more good news that comes out about all this, the more crazy they become trying to control us with it. So I'm concerned about the lack of science here. I'm concerned about the compromise of the integrity of science that's going on. I'm concerned about the manipulation of numbers. I said I had A, B, C, and D. I've only got A, B, C. Manipulation of the numbers. I'm concerned about that. That's not just something thrown out there like by some conspiracy theorist. This is proven. Now, the question does remain, was it done on purpose or was it an accident? Did somebody report a 9.8% positive rate accidentally as 98%? Is that what happened? So they later caught it and came back and made a correction? I would buy that. But 100%? Out of how many counties in Florida? I think it was like 20 or 30 different counties reported 100% positive. It just gives you an itch right about here. Am I right? Maybe over here. It makes you scratch your head. Was that a weird way to put it? So you're wondering what's the matter with him? Why is he itching? But it makes you want to scratch your head and shake your head and go, what? How can this be? Manipulating the numbers. The big scare was, we got to protect the elderly. We must protect the elderly. Right? Wasn't that what they were telling us at first? And it made old guys like me feel so proud. I walked around looking at everybody and said, I'm glad you care so much for me. No. So why then did the New York's governor, California's governor, Michigan's governor, I think it was Pennsylvania, now I'm getting a little wobbly on my remembering, Wolf, whoever. Why did these 4 governors require nursing facilities to receive COVID-positive elderly patients when those nursing facilities said, we can't do this. We can't have them come in here. They are going to create an environment of exposure for our whole nursing home here. We're not equipped. It's heartbreaking. You should have heard some of the things that I heard and read some of the letters that I read coming from owners of these nursing homes and some of the nurses that work in there to Governor Cuomo, begging him, don't do this. We are not equipped to. If somebody gets sick at our nursing home, we send them to the hospital as quickly as we can to separate them from the rest of the population here. Those governors ignored that. Our governor also ignored the facts and required them to admit COVID positive clients. And as a consequence, 50% of the elderly that died in this pandemic died in those states. That's what, 4 states out of 50. 4 states out of 50 account for 50% of the elderly who died. It wasn't about protecting the elderly. It puts you in a bad position where you start having to think things like this. What these guys do, figure they, well, here's how many of the elderly that would normally have died. Let's do this to make sure that many die. It does make you think that way, doesn't it? And that's part of my point. I think one of the greatest damages that has been done to us by these people is the way they've broken down our ability to have confidence in our medical providers, to have confidence in our hospitals. Now, by all means, use your hospital. Just make sure you're admitted by a doctor you know and trust, and that doctor you know and trust is watching what's going on. Amen? So I'm not trying to say, don't go to the hospital, but I'd rather die than go to a hospital. That's just my opinion. My dad said that to me when I was since about this big. He said, Jerry, he says, here's what I've learned as I've watched things go on in my life. People die at hospitals. That's what he told me. He said, I die there. So if I get sick, don't send me to one of those places. I'll be surely dead. As he got older, he changed his opinion. When he got real sick with cancer, we did go see the hospital and all that kind of stuff. But even then, he insisted that if he was going to die, he's going to die at home. So that's how he went out. And that's not advice. That's an anecdote. That's not advice. I think if my wife was sick and needed a hospital, I'd find a good hospital. I'd find doctors I trusted. I'd talk to them very carefully. I'd watch what was going on. I would do everything I can to make sure she got the care that she needed. Isn't that what you would do? Yeah, of course. Of course, that's what all of us would do. You probably want to do that anyway, even without COVID nonsense. But now just be more careful than ever before about that kind of stuff. Because some of these doctors are just a little bit strange. Whenever Becky's mom was getting feeble and getting sick and everything, we had a couple of doctors try to talk us into letting her die. Yeah. Can you imagine that? Now, literally trying to talk us into, she's had a long life. There comes a time when you need to just let go. Stuff like that. Now, doctors. So we fired that doctor and got somebody else. That's what we did. I said, you're off this. I don't want you getting near her. Amen? You got to fight for your stuff anyway. So, okay. I have about 5 more points here. No, I'm kidding around. But all of this can be resolved on November 3rd, 2020. Or is it November 4th? I guess it depends on what day Tuesday shows up in the first week of November. But all of this can be resolved in November. Somebody said, and I happen to agree with them, might be the only pandemic that was ever resolved by an election. Some of you are thinking, well, Trump seems to be going along with a lot of this stuff. Well, I don't have time to go into that right now, but here's something I do want to conclude with, and we're going to pray. This is James O'Keefe. How many of you know who that is? James O'Keefe. Okay, one person raised their hand. Veritas. How many of you know about that? Project Veritas. 4 more people raised their hand. Yikes. Project Veritas is that group that did the undercover video that exposed Planned Parenthood's activity in selling baby body parts. These be the guys. Okay? So they're busy with that kind of work, going in undercover, mic'd and cameraed, and videoing these conversations and exposing some of the stuff that goes on. Well, Mr. O'Keefe is writing to say he's been getting visits from Obama bots in the deep state who are harassing him. And then he goes on and he documents some of the stuff that's going on. But here's what he says that I thought was interesting as a conclusion to my little Issachar report tonight. He says, why? Because my hard-hitting undercover video exposés, which you may know about from Fox News, strikes fear into their hearts because it exposes what's going on, and yada, and then nothing makes their skin crawl more than the one topic they don't want Americans to know anything about: voter fraud. He says, with the powder keg of information my undercover investigators are digging up right now, information that I believe could turn 2020 on its head, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi pushing her unsecured vote-by-mail scheme, I'm afraid it's all going to get worse. Now, you've heard me say this really quite a long time ago. I said my big concern is voter fraud. Has been for a long time. I think voter fraud is a real serious concern any election, but this upcoming election is particularly concerning. The stakes in this election are so high for us and for the left. I mean, our liberties are literally on the line here. our freedom, our way of life. We're voting on it this coming November. The stakes for that side, a lot of people don't really understand how serious this is for them. They have been busy for decades building the infrastructure that would work to swallow America into a socialist country. They've been working with China for a long time, setting this up. This has been going on for a long, long time. Some of you might remember when China was trying to buy the port of the port in Long Beach. How many of you remember that? They were trying to buy the port in Long Beach, and we raised a big brouhaha and stopped it. But if we had not, it would have gone through. China would own a port on the American coast. How brain dead is that? But that's the kind of thing that's been going on. And that didn't stop, by the way, and there are still concerns about what they've been able to do in securing access through our ports to this state, especially. I don't have time to go into it in greater detail right now. I'm building my file for that, and we'll do a couple of shows on it once I get all my T's crossed and I's dotted. But I have enough information right now to tell you this is concerning. This is a real concern. The fraternization that's been going on between liberals here and China. The Democrat Party have their hands deep, deep, deep into the pockets of China. Biden, very particularly, very deeply connected with China. It's a very serious situation. So it's not only about some politicians who are afraid they won't have power anymore. This is a bigger game than that. This was the time in their plan when they were going to, pull the strings and let go the monster. This is what they were going to do with Hillary in office. Well, Trump won. And that has got them out of their mind. You can't even begin to appreciate what God did for us in saving us from Hillary and giving us Trump. It's the more I go into this and the more I understand how deep the deep state is, how these Marxists, socialists, are distributed throughout our bureaucracy in this government. It goes deep. So we need to continue praying that God will uproot these wicked trees. And I've been praying a lot about that, and I'm seeing God do some things. And in one session of prayer a little while back, I said, well, God, it seems like you could just rip them up, And it was like the Holy Spirit said to me, do you remember when Paul was wanting to go into Asia? And I said, no, not now. And they wanted to go to Bithynia, and I said, no, not now. And then we wound up leading him to Macedonia. And then he came back to Asia later. He said, Jerry, you got to trust my timing. Trust my timing. And I think we need to be mindful of that. God does things in his own way. And one thing that occurred to me is I know that when I'm pulling weeds in my garden, if you just go grab them and yank them off, you leave the root in the dirt, don't you? But if you grab one of them, you wiggle it, pull, wiggle. Come on, some of you expert weed pullers. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You don't just go grab them up because you'll break it off and the root stays in there. So you pull it and you wiggle it, right, Jim? Pull a little bit. You can almost hear it and feel it coming up out of the soil. Then you wiggle a little bit more, you're gentle with it, and then finally you pull it up and you get all the root. There's nothing more satisfying than getting a weed up on all of its roots. Well, that's what God's doing. He's grabbing these trees, shaking them, pulling them, shaking them, pulling them. He's going to get the roots with them. Amen? So we need to believe that. Let's stand together, please.